Welcome back to the Mentored Show, which offers quick lessons packaged within minisodes for busy founders and startup leaders like you. I'm Adel, and I'm being mentored live and unscripted by Ed, who's built, sold, turned around, and scaled startups all the way to the New York Stock Exchange. He's based in the US, a developed economy, and I'm based in Dubai, a hub within an emerging economy. And we compare notes. This is real talk, no scripts, no theory. Let's get into it. As a last point, last advice for someone who is looking to pick the right opportunity for them when they're joining as a startup leader, when they're looking at the CEO of the company, are there any questions they should be asking? Because I don't want to join a startup where the CEO might be a narcissist person who could waste my time. I'll eventually leave the company because I feel uncomfortable. This person doesn't appreciate the team that they work with. So, is there any advice that you could help someone who's joining as a co founder, as an early employee, spot any kind of alarming signs?
So let me answer the question with this set of guidelines. You're an individual that is speaking to an early stage company. Maybe it has already gotten its funding, maybe not. Maybe it's already at five, $10 million of revenue, but it's still a young company. And you're either interviewing to be part of the executive team or a fairly high level manager. And I'd even say, even as an employee fresh out of college, or maybe this is your second job in your career. Here's my comment to people that are looking at joining a young company with fast growing intent. If all you are interested in is the paycheck, the interview becomes very simple. The interview becomes, what is expected of me? How do you like to operate your business? Is this 5 days a week, 9 to 5? Is this 7 days a week on call all the time? You can ask all of those questions to understand the environment that you're about to step in and how much work is involved. And is that something you'll enjoy? If it's a person that is more introspective, absolutely. The salary, the benefits, those are important because you have to support yourself, you have to support your family. However, I would encourage people to think about what else do they want out of the opportunity, not the job, the opportunity that goes beyond salary. And you ask questions. Now, this is also back to culture. By the way, we don't do this very well in the West either. But you could ask questions like, what are your expectations from your executive of sales or your executive of technology or your executive of product management? What kind of personality do you like to work with? Do you like debate? Do you like to hear alternative opinions? How do you think about succession planning? You want to ask probing questions that have everything to do with the culture, the vision of the founder, and the things that are important to you beyond the paycheck and the benefits, right? Because guess what? If it's a great company and there's lots of opportunity and innovation is highly regarded, aggressive behavior and thinking and execution is highly regarded, I could be at that business my entire career. Right? You hear about a lot of people that go to work for Google for 20, 30 years or IBM or pick any big name. But even today, we live in a world where people do change jobs roughly every 5 years or so. That seems to be not an unusual thing. Certainly every 10 years, not an unusual thing. And so I would hope that if you're going to put in that kind of time and dedication to your job, to your career, you're getting something out of it besides just a paycheck and health benefits. You're actually learning more, developing more as a professional, and you can take that set of skills, that increased set of skills, either to a larger organization or maybe you go start your own company. So ask questions about aspects of the job opportunity that is beyond the salary and the benefits. What do you want? So you really need to be clear about what it is you want. And the reason why I say, even in the West, this is not something that happens easily. Young people go to a company and the first thing they say is, how much vacation do I get? How much salary do I get? What healthcare benefits are there? Can I get insurance, health insurance from my family? It's all the basics. Nothing wrong with that. But very rarely do they say, how can I further my career? Now, it's not just on the person doing the interview, it's also on the manager that's doing the hiring. And so, one of the questions I always ask, and I try to encourage any of the entrepreneurs that I advise, ask your candidate, where do they see themselves in 12 to 36 months? What do they aspire to? Ask the candidate, have you ever thought of doing your own business, being the founder? Start asking probing questions that help to understand the person sitting across the table from you and how they're going to help your company. And if all you're going to talk about is the benefits package and the salary for an executive hire, that would concern me, right? Because I don't want a robot. I actually want an active participant in growing the business. So my questions tend to be, how do you resolve conflict? Tell me about the last time you made a bad decision and how did you recover from that bad decision? How do you handle criticism? Do you clam up? Do you get combative? Do you reflect and think about what's being said? Ask hard questions. This actually tries to probe at who that person is and how they behave under stress. Because guess what? If everything's going well, everyone's a nice guy. It's when things are not going well that you get to see a whole different facet of somebody's personality and how the stress impacts them.
You just reminded me of a situation where someone was asking for feedback. And then when I share the feedback, it's a constructive feedback, still something that they asked for. They didn't handle it well. They said, oh, thank you. But then the behavior changed over time. Naturally, it impacted the trust between us. And also, I have that demon, I call it, within me. And I believe, at least I'm assuming, that most people have that, which is when we get feedback, there is, depending on our personalities, with me, it's a bit more intense, I feel. There is a kickback, right? Then I need to acknowledge it that this is feedback. Take it. Maybe it's not packaged the right way, but just take it and move on. Do you have any advice on handling these situations?
I absolutely do, because I've been on the receiving end of what I call constructive criticism. And I've also been on the giving end of constructive criticism. Couple of comments, and this is a tangential observation. A few years ago, I was speaking to the head of HR of a large growing company. And I actually used the phrase, I said, you talk to people all through the organization. I'm a fairly highly visible individual. Give me some constructive criticism on what I can do better. That's what I asked for. And this individual says, I don't like the word criticism because it sounds negative. And I thought, oh, dear God, here we go with the word salad. It is criticism, and criticism is not a bad thing. If you want to call it advice and makes it feel better for you, great. But at the end of the day, you are giving a critique of something. Okay. By the way, if the critique is positive, Adel, you did a really great job. I can't tell you how wonderful it is to see execution of that caliber. Nobody's complaining because it's positive. But if it's negative or it has an edge to it, you can't just deliver that criticism one time and say, go away and figure it out. I think what you have to do as the executive is to say, look, I do have some constructive feedback for you, not criticism, feedback. We're going to neutralize any emotional language here. I want you to listen very carefully, and then I want you to think about it. And next week, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this conversation we're having today, because it's not going to be easy. So I inform the person that what's coming is my view of something that they need to improve upon. It could be their people skills, it could be their execution, It could be their judgment on how to prioritize. It could be any number of things. But I don't want the answer right then and there because it will be likely emotional and defensive. I want them to go away and stew on that topic for a couple of days. And then let's sit down and have a conversation. And when I say that, my phone will not ring. I will not be looking at my email. I will not be texting on my mobile. They are going to get 100% of my attention to have that conversation. I also expect them not to have their phone ring, not to have them respond to text messages, because that's how we are today, right? Everything is instantaneous. A serious conversation deserves respect of 100% attention. Otherwise, it's not valuable. And I think when you give that to people, it's going to catch many people by surprise that somebody actually gives a damn to have a serious conversation about a criticism, right? Because at the end of the day, I actually want to get along with the people that work with me. I want them to be successful. I want them to enjoy the work they do. And I'm operating on the premise that no one, myself included, is perfect. And so when we make mistakes or when we have a certain flat spot in our personality, let's have that conversation. And we may come back to it more than one time.
That's it for this minisode. Big thanks to Ed and to all of you for tuning in. If this sparked something, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one, and make sure you share it within your network. Got a question for Ed? Drop it within the comments. See you next time.
The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the host and guests and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of any affiliated organization. The content provided is for informational purposes only and should not be considered as professional advice. We encourage listeners to conduct their own research and consult with relevant professionals before making any business or career decisions.